Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really powerful architectural pattern for getting enterprise AI under control. We're going to see how huge organizations can go from total data chaos to a place of engineered control, which is absolutely critical when security and compliance are on the line.
So here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start by exploring the data chaos that, let's be honest, plagues most big companies. Then we'll look at some of the current ways people try to fix it before we introduce a new blueprint for control, this thing called registry-driven architecture. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of how it works, and then we'll wrap up with the strategic payoff. And trust me, this is why it's a real game changer for control and compliance.
Okay, let's dive right in. To really get the solution, we first have to understand the problem. And inconsistent data governance, well, it's not just some small headache, it's a massive business risk.
This example right here, it just cuts straight to the heart of the whole issue. When your governance rules are patchwork, applied differently across different tools, you're basically just creating security loopholes. Your policies become more like suggestions than actual rules, and that just swings the door wide open for huge compliance and security failures.
And it isn't just about security. What happens when one team defines revenue or active customer one way, and another team has a totally different definition? You get reports that completely contradict each other, and that just erodes any trust you have in the data itself. At that point, making reliable decisions becomes pretty much impossible.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and a lot worse. You might think, hey, let's just throw a powerful AI at this mess and let it sort it out. Well, it turns out that makes the problem even bigger. The AI's context window gets completely overloaded. It has no idea what your company's internal slang means, and the hand-coded tools connecting the AI to your data, they're fragile, and they break all the time as your data sources change.
So what have companies been doing to try and solve this? Well, two big architectural patterns have popped up: data mesh and data fabric. They both want to bring order to the chaos, but they go about it in fundamentally different ways, and that's created a bit of a gap. Think of it like this. Data mesh is all about a federated model. It gives control to the individual teams who know their own data inside and out. It's super agile, but it can lead to some serious inconsistencies. Data fabric, on the other hand, does the opposite. It centralizes all governance, enforcing one set of rules for everybody, everywhere. That's consistent for sure, but it can also create some major bottlenecks. This leaves us needing something that combines that centralized, deterministic control with the kind of semantic clarity that AI actually needs to function.
So yeah, we need a different approach. And that brings us to this new blueprint for control, a registry-driven architecture. The whole goal here is to provide that missing link for safely deploying AI that can actually take actions on its own.
Okay, the heart of this entire architecture is something called the metrics registry. I want you to think of it as the ultimate, definitive rulebook for all of your data. It is a single, machine-readable file that lays out what every metric means, exactly how to calculate it, and who is allowed to touch it. And the best part? It's all captured as code. And this right here, this is the core philosophy. It's so brilliant. Instead of asking a probabilistic AI, which is just a fancy way of saying an AI that guesses, to figure out complex business logic from a sea of raw, messy data, you do the hard deterministic math first. You give the AI trusted, pre-calculated answers, not just a pile of raw ingredients. This analogy is just perfect. The metrics registry works exactly like a city's building codes. It sets these non-negotiable standards for safety and quality. The AI agents, they're like the individual builders. They're free to be creative and do their thing, but they absolutely have to operate within those computationally enforced rules. This is governance by design, not by accident.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, right? But how does this actually work in the real world? Let's trace it from that central declaration all the way to a system that is robustly governed from end to end.
The whole process is actually pretty elegant, and it breaks down into 4 key steps. First, you declare everything as code in the registry. Second, the system takes that and automatically compiles it into a set of version-controlled tools. Third, and this is key, the AI is then bound to use only these pre-approved tools. It's like a safe sandbox. And finally, when the AI uses one of those tools, it gets back trusted, pre-computed data, and all the access rules are enforced automatically.
And this slide really puts the risk into perspective. The registry approach, it's like giving the AI a limited menu of safe, chef-approved options. The alternative, text-to-SQL, is like handing it the keys to the entire warehouse and just hoping it doesn't burn the place down. One is controlled and completely auditable, the other is unpredictable and just plain risky.
So after all that, what's the real payoff for putting this level of discipline in place? Well, the benefits are real, they're strategic, and they hit the biggest challenges in enterprise data governance head on.
And you don't just have to take my word for it. The numbers speak for themselves. The source material shows that companies, especially in super-regulated industries like finance, see this massive drop in compliance incidents when they adopt this kind of policy as code approach. I mean, we're talking about a more than 50% reduction. That is a huge strategic win.
And it goes way beyond just that one big number. This kind of architecture makes your whole system audible because every single definition is version controlled. Your governance is actually enforceable since it's baked right into the tools. It massively cuts down on AI hallucinations by limiting what the AI is allowed to do. It makes your costs predictable. And it solves this annoying problem called tool drift, where an AI's idea of a tool is different from what it actually does. This is really a framework for building trust, safety, and predictability into your systems.
So ultimately, this all boils down to one fundamental question. Is your company's AI strategy just built on the hope that these probabilistic models won't make a really expensive mistake? Or is it built on an architecture of code that engineers safety, control, and compliance in from the very beginning? This approach really suggests that for the modern enterprise, building on code is the only real path forward.